This film is basically a rebuttal to the Canadian broadcasting companies. They did a movie called The Magic Hands, where a guy was debunking the L-shaped rod's ability to find water. Well, it's really simple. They don't find water. All they find is disturbances in the magnetic field of the Earth. So hopefully people will understand nothing to do with water. All right, good morning. My name's Patrick Brock. I have a question as why are men and women magnetically different? We'll get into how these rods work in a minute, but for right now, we have an Edward and a Thelma. So as I approach Edward's grave, the rod swings to the right. As I go back with Thelma, as I walk to her grave, the rod should swing to the left. There's no way that I'm manipulating these rods, as I have it in one of my scientifically engineered Bic pen holders. Here we have Fred and Sophia. Now I'm using two rods, and what I'll be able to do, even if there wasn't a headstone here, would be able to find their graves. So here indicates a grave. It doesn't indicate the sex. Here indicates a grave. Doesn't indicate the sex. If I go back over it with just one rod, Sophia should go to my left, and Fred should go to my right, indicating that there's some magnetic difference between men and women. Now we're going to try to find a really old grave to show that there's one grave over here that the people died like 150 years ago, and they still indicate male, female. Here we have Daniel and Hannah, and luckily the family has replaced the really old tombstones with a new one. Let's see. Daniel died in 1844, and his wife Hannah died March 10th, 1863. So these people definitely are classified as old-timers. So they've been dead, what, 120 some odd years? Now I'll go over their graves, indicating a grave, nobody in the middle, Hannah's grave. Now what I can also do here is I can also tell if this is an adult or an infant. As I go forward, so the rods cross here and they stay crossed until I get to the end of the grave. So that's a 2 by 6 foot grave. A child will be 2 foot by 2 foot or 2 foot by 3 foot. We'll go over and we'll try finding out what sex, make sure they're in the right graves. It's a little windy. So Daniel swings to the right. The rod will then go back on its own accord, and Hannah swings to the left, indicating that she's a female. So these people have been dead for a very, very long time, and we're going to cover these rods in a little bit, but right now it's just showing that they've been dead a very long time, and Hannah still shows up as a woman and Daniel shows up as a man. Alrighty, last thing for this cemetery, we have lots of headstones. The lack of a headstone does not mean, I'm just holding these in my hand now. You don't need, if you hold them loosely, there's not a problem. A grave. Here's another grave. Another grave, a grave, 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 grave. Lots of graves. Just because there's no headstone doesn't mean that there's nobody there. Alrighty, our next venture will be at a pet cemetery because animals show up the exact same. Alrighty, well here we are. Nice October, mid-October 2015. We're at a pet cemetery. So to show that animals react the same as male, female as humans, so we have Salt, the male, Pepper, female, Poncho is a female, that doesn't make any sense, Misty is a male, Jigs, male, Ginger, female, Lassie, female, BB Dexter, could be cremains, or a male. Cremains don't show up. Nothing. Susie Q is a female. Empty Spot, Clancy doesn't show up. Spooky is a male. Butch is a male. Isis, come on Isis, is a female. Andy is a male. Well, whatever it is, it's a male. Empty Spot. Daisy is a female, and Gretchen is a female. So human, animal, males and females make these rods swing in a different direction. The only thing I can account for is the magnetic field. There is another little trick that if it doesn't want to work very well, quite often you can take a second rod, put it in the ground, and that seems to amplify the signal. I'll show you that in a little bit. In the laboratory here, we've made our rods. This rod weighs 10 grams. Got to put in a little hole there to make it work. This rod weighs 100 grams. Still here. So I have a 10 gram, 100 grams, and then we get into the real technical stuff. My $8 scale here. This weighs, close as I can get it, to 1 kilo, 2.32 pounds, something along those lines. And the next one is approximately 1 kilo. So we have different rods. The smallest one I was able to find is an 18 gauge wire that weighs just about 3 grams. 2.9 grams. So these are the rods we're going to be using. The rods I use at the cemetery are just bronze coated rods with the flux, and I use these because they had a nice white coating, and the cameraman said it's much easier to see these than just plain silver rods. So we'll go out in the test field and start seeing what these things can do. big misconception about these rods is that they find water. Um, it's true a lot of pipes are buried in the ground and they'll pick it up. These happen to be electric wires. This is the telephone and cable and the power coming in. So there are no wires in the ditches that are feeding this thing right here. Again, I have a 10-gram rod and a 100-gram rod. The wind's picking up a little bit. And they don't cross. They'll open up. Go the other way. Now there's another one over here, which I believe is the cable. See if I can find it. This is right here. That drainage starts there and goes there, so I'm not reading that. So I have a cable line that's feeding into my house right here. Again, no water whatsoever. We can go over and meet Bob the cat here. Bob the cat is buried here. And my son guarantees me that Bob the cat was a boy. So what we're going to do is we're going to slowly walk. And we find that our rods cross here. And as I leave, they open back up. You know what I've never done? I've never walked backwards and tried it. Alright, so there lies the mortal remains of Bob the cat. I'm going to take one rod, go over, and Bob the cat, the rod swings to the right, indicating that it's a male. Alright. So trying different size rods. Here we now have a 100-gram and a 3-gram rod. There we go. How about those? Now we're going to try the big boys. So here we have two rods that are each a kilo. Bob was probably a 6 or 7 kilo cat. His grave is maybe half a meter by less than that. So we'll see what a little 6 or 7 kilo cat can do to 2 kilos of mass. And how much force does it take to move 2 kilos of mass? A pretty substantial mass. My neighbor is going to be planting some bushes, so he called the underground utility locating company. And as you can see, we have a red and an orange flag, and unmarked is the drainage ditch, which I know goes from there all the way out to the street. So I should here pick up my drainage ditch with my 100 and 1,000 gram rod. As I go this way, they're probably only going to show up as one ditch because they're so close together. And again, there is no water whatsoever buried in a power and cable line. The question was brought up, what about snakes and lizards? Well, they're vertebrae. You know, should be no difference between a snake and a human. But the thing was brought up, well, how about insects? So bees at this time of year are going to be 99.9% female. So we're going to see if insects can, we're dealing with some wind here, we're going to see if a colony of female insects will move the rod to the left. Unfortunately, this colony died, but dead bees should, like dead humans and dead animals, move this to the left. And it moved to the left, even fighting the wind. To the left. What about this little thing? And this one. To the left. I've done this on live beehives where bees are flying all about, and it does the same thing. It will move it to the left. So now we have female humans, move it to the left. Dog and cats, move it to the left. And now insects will move this to the left. Unfortunately, I don't know any place where to find a whole colony of male insects. All right, to debunk the theory that these find water, I'm going to cut a line in my grass. No action on the rods. So now I'm going to take my scraper just cut a line. Can't tell you how many times people say, oh, it's finding water. It's finding water that's gotten into the grave. So this should debunk the water. All right, 1 minute ago, these rods didn't work. I now go over where I just cut and they open up. Now, 5 or 6 years ago, I did another program on genealogy, and those trees were only like so high. And I cut another line like right here 4 or 5 years ago. Right here is where I cut that line. Again, it was identical to that one, and it was 4 or 5 years ago. So definitely no water. Trying to keep costs down on these projects. Rather than a pen holder, which works rather well, we're now using a straw, much cheaper. We've got to keep the cost down. These are the rods that I used at the cemetery. I'm going to get rid of this one, that's tight. I was doing some weird and crazy experiments, and I have now desensitized these rods. They don't work. Somehow, I have no idea how, well, I do know how I did it. I have somehow molecularly changed the composition of these rods because they don't work. I duplicated it with one of my favorite rods, a coat hanger cut up. I was able to duplicate this experiment. So these rods are now desensitized, demagnetized, whatever they are. They don't work. They work great at the cemetery. After I did this one weird experiment, they no longer work. So try figuring that one out. These are the 2 rods that I used filming in the cemetery, in the pet cemetery, and everywhere else. I made kind of what I consider an amazing discovery is that now, we're going over my sewer and water line. These rods are dead. They don't work. I take 2 other rods, compliments of the local utility company. and they work fine. What I found is that I wanted to see if by holding them out in front of me, they would still work. So I did that with these rods, the white ones. And I put one in here, and I held the other one next to my body, like so. And not only didn't they work, but it seems to have somehow changed the molecular structure of these, because they no longer work. They used to work fine. I found you don't even need this. All you have to do is hold the rods out like so, and it will desensitize them. We'll try it with these two rods that worked 2 minutes ago. Hold it out like so, and they don't work. So there's something about holding these rods like this that will render these things inactive. So the only thing I can figure is that we're somehow changing the molecular structure of the rods. Interesting. Try to figure it out. I call it the Brock effect, since I came up with it. Try to figure out why that is. Have fun. Do the best you can. Thank you. Last, but by far not least, is some plants have gender, male and female. I got a cortisone shot and my right arm is acting up. So this is a winterberry. If I go over it, it goes to the right, indicating a male plant. Now something kind of bizarre is I hold it in my left arm, which is got something in it. It will continuously spin. And I wasn't trying to make it spin, it would just spin. So here we have a male winterberry plant. Go over by its girlfriend. So here, as I hold my little rod going into the plant, it swings to the left. Just like humans, animals, bees, plants have gender, male, female. We're going to go find a different variety. These are viburnum. Somebody said they're arrowwood viburnum. I don't know. So we'll give this guy a try. And it went first to the right, indicating that this is a male. Go over to its neighbor. And it goes to the left, indicating that this is a female viburnum. So I hope you enjoyed this. It was fun making. If you are able to figure out why these L-shaped rods work the way they do, you can contact me. My credit information will be at the back. And enjoy trying to figure out why they work. If you can't figure out why they work, at least enjoy using them. There's also a woman named Brenda Marble who did a nice paper on this. It's about a 9-page article. I agree with 80% of what she says. She says it works for 90% of the people. I found it usually works for about 50% of the people. And it works to different degrees. Some people, the rods will just snap, open and closed. Other people, they'll just barely move, and some people, they don't work for at all. There's a few occasional people where the rods, instead of closing in, will close out. So have fun with this, and hopefully you can figure out why it works. I just enjoy doing it. So have a good day.